Well, good morning, everyone. I see our attendee count is still ticking up. We'll give it about another 10, 15 seconds to let folks get in, and we will get started. I hope everyone is doing well on this Thursday. All right. Well, good morning, everyone, again. My name is Hart Nelson. On behalf of Citizens for Modern Transit, I would like to welcome you to our quarterly Talking Transit event, Can the Bus Drive Development? A New Look at Transit-Oriented Development. I have the honor of chairing Citizens for Modern Transit, and I'm very happy to have you with us today. I want to thank you to our presenting partners on today's event, which would be the Green Business Challenge and APA. Welcome to Susan Hare and Rachel Witt representing APA today, and thanks to Jean Ponzi who could not be with us. We appreciate these partnerships and their ability to help extend the reach of the message. I want to thank you to all the CMT board members who have joined us this morning. And I'd also like to thank CMT's Platinum and Gold sponsors, including AARP in St. Louis, Bi-State Development, Emerson, BJC Healthcare, Missouri and Kansas Laborers District Council, ULICO, and Washington University in St. Louis. We'd not be able to provide these updates without their support, so thank you very much. I'd also like to welcome CMT's new Assistant Director. Welcome aboard to Mike Foley. So today we're going to discuss transit-oriented development in the St. Louis region. And usually when we have these conversations, we're talking about progress being made near MetroLink. However, new trends are emerging. This discussion with area developers and a representative from Metro Transit will highlight how the bus system serves as a driving force for development as well. They will also discuss the impact on equity, livability, and future regional planning. It should be a very interesting conversation. And so now to get us started, I would like to invite CMT's Executive Director, Kim Sella, to take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hart, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. We know that this topic is becoming more and more important as we discuss the future of transit in the region and what that vision looks like. I had the opportunity on our planning call last week to begin a dialogue with our panelists about our subject this morning, and one thing really stuck in my mind. There was a reference to the fact that St. Louis could be parochial. That might be putting it mildly, but they can, we can definitely be parochial in St. Louis. However, the conversation turned to the fact that you can utilize transit and transportation options as a way to connect these neighborhoods. And this doesn't cause the neighborhoods to lose their identity, but strengthens the city overall. So with that in mind, the key to moving forward will be to focus on leveraging true multimodal sites in the St. Louis region. Having more transportation options puts people first. So please join me in welcoming our panel of experts this morning. Bill Odell is a retired design principal with HOK Architects, and he is working on a Lafayette Square project. Phil Hulse is with the managing principal of Green Street of St. Louis, and you will see on our map, Green Street has several green dots underway. So we look forward to hearing from Phil. Jeff Tegetoff is the operating partner of CRG. Rachel Witt is the executive director of the South Grand Community Improvement District, and Bryan Rogers is the director of long range planning with Metro Transit, the Bi-State Development. We're going to start by allowing our panelists to provide a quick overview of their projects that they are working on, and then we are going to leave a lot of time in the end for questions. So if you do have questions, we ask that you place those in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and we promise we will get to as many as possible. So to kick it off, I'm going to turn it over to Bill, and he has a few slides to talk about the first project we have on the slate this morning. So thank you everyone for joining us, and welcome, Bill.
Thank you for having me, Kim. I'm going to talk about the Edge District at Lafayette Square. Next slide. I'll make this quick. Next. How do I do this? Who's running? There we go. There's the site relative to Lafayette Square. It's the north edge of Lafayette Square. If you know Lafayette Square, more or less where the word site is where the former Praxair site was. It's about 12-acre development. Next. Next slide. We all remember this from 2005. The site went up in a rather spectacular fashion and been vacant since then. Next. This is the development from the northeast or northwest. It's been largely vacant ground except the truck dealership for a very long time, and obviously not producing any tax revenue or very little. This is the development plan. At the moment, it's like any development, it changes a bit. The initial construction now underway is a 128-unit apartment building. 14 townhouses are about to start. Another 34-unit development is also about to start. And an extensive infrastructure, which is about done now, because the city sites like this cannot operate with the old infrastructures, everything from electric to sewers to water. Next. Next slide, please. I'm so used to hitting my own slides here. Next. This is an early rendering of the site, and go back one. You go too fast. Well, that's all right. Let's leave it here. The site was it's kind of down the hill from the rest of Lafayette Square, about a story and a half, and given where it was, it called for a dense development. When we first started this, we didn't realize that the proposed MetroLink line is coming down Jefferson and then turns right onto Choteau. So that became kind of one of the key design drivers in one sense. Next. Well, you can see where the stop was, where we're proposing the stop is, and whether it's a bus or not. One of the problems I think we have in St. Louis with buses in particular is that the buses, I don't believe there are 5 people in the Lafayette Square area who could tell you where the bus lines are, honestly, because they change all the time, the signs disappear. So go back a slide, please. Back, please. Kim, are you running the slides? Okay. So you all, if you're into transit, you probably, okay, go forward. One of the goals, whether MetroLink happens or it's a rubber-tired system that I guess is also being considered, or it's just a regular bus, we've designed the Choteau frontage in a way to allow something like a station. This is from Chiratiba, if you know this system. You see similar systems in Europe now that really do 2 things. It speeds buses for sure, but it also is a fixed point that people can identify with more than a 8x10 sign on a metal post of where the bus stop is. Next. Next slide. All right. Back-ish. Just one slide. Go back. So if MetroLink happens, this is a problem I think we might discuss, is the coordination between all of our agencies, because so often St. Louis just manages to shoot itself in the foot. And here's an example of this. This is the proposed MetroLink line. The bridge, the only obstruction really is a bridge at I-44 over Jefferson. It's been known for quite some time that the bridge that existed wasn't high enough to allow a line, whether it's a bus, a hard-wheeled bus, or a hard rail, or bus, I mean, a rubber-tired vehicle to get under there. Next. And yet we've just, next slide, please. They've just MoDOT has just finished this bridge and didn't make any accommodation at all for the MetroLink. And the answer from MoDOT is, oh, if it happens, we'll just rebuild the bridge. Now, this bridge is something like $80 million. Are we gonna just throw another $80 million when it would have taken, in the neighborhood, I'm just guessing, $500,000 more to have accommodated the future MetroLink? So just something to talk about. Our agencies just don't talk to each other or respect each other in some ways, I think. So that's a little about our project.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much for that. And we apologize, there's a little lag time on the slides. The images are so big, it takes a little while for them to load. So we apologize for the lag time on the AV, but we will try to keep moving this forward. And thank you for that quick update on the Lafayette Square project. So next up, we have Phil Hulse with Green Street. And Phil, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Kim, and thanks, Bill, for your introduction about Lafayette Square. You know, I think, we've been at development for, 20 plus years, and it's been quite an evolution of who we are and what we're focused on. But over the last, I would say 5, 6 years in particular, we've really become much more focused on the Central Corridor, and also transportation and reconnecting our neighborhoods is so vital to really creating success, economic development, and kind of equity and diversity in our communities. And so one of the key projects that we're very focused on is the Armory District. And we have an image here that Kim will shoot to here in a minute. But everything that we're focused on is how do we connect to the communities around us. This picture here shows the Armory kind of at a night shot. And this is kind of the broader district as you look from Grand back to the west. We are proposing really creating more of a community that lives, works in this district, that reactivates it. It's kind of been shuttered for quite some time. And we have put together a comprehensive plan here to redevelop everything from Grand Avenue, south of 40, all the way to Vanderbilt. So this is really kind of the first couple of phases, which will include 2 mid-rise towers for residential with lots of amenities. It'll have a plaza that you see in front of the Armory next to Highway 40 that really creates a gathering place and a connection that people can come off the MetroLink and come to this area. And the Armory will be a destination entertainment. For many, many years, the Armory kind of sat idle, but before that, it was really a place for softball, for soccer, indoor track. And back in the 50s and 60s, it was home.
These speakers that are getting to, some of the big global challenges that are going on around the world and sort of opening people's eyes. That seems to be something my network's interested in.
Whoops. So, part of what we're trying to do here is really create in our projects, be next to these transit centered developments. And so we have the MetroLink, obviously at Grand. We're 1 stop away from Cortex, 2 stops from the BJC, Washington U Medical Center. We're 1 stop away from Union Station. So being on these transit stops is allowing us to think about redeveloping and how do we create this energy, community, and dynamic that reactivates and uses the transportation system rather than cars. So this is just 1 step. We will be very bike friendly also. There will also be, through the Shoto Greenway, bike trails that connect our city, both east, west, north, south, that will travel through the Armory, St. Louis Foundry, and St. Louis University. So this connectivity is really vital to creating, connections, getting people to really embrace living down here. And so a lot of what we're focused on is really, a much more robust setting for transit to succeed. The shots that you saw before we look at this transit were of the rec hall, which will be an entertainment sports venue. As you look at our transit here, we've really focused most of our projects through here. We've got about 14. And we think, you know, this is really the core of success for St. Louis because it's the biggest employers. It's where our tech industry is. It's where a lot of people enjoy the neighborhoods that are historic, like the Grove, like Botanical Heights, Tower Grove, the Central West End. And there's really about 17 neighborhoods that'll get reconnected as we reactivate all of this public transportation using buses, rail, and bicycles and pedestrian. And that's a much more friendly, connected way that we're going to succeed in what we're doing. You can flip to the next slide. So part of making this all work is creating more density with living and entertainment. What you're looking at here is our new office that will be located near Vandeventer and Kings Highway. We're moving from Clayton to the city, and we're also bringing a new entertainment venue that will draw about 250,000 people to the city called Barquet. It's a dog park, which sounds pretty simple, but it's an entertainment venue. It's a learning center. You know, they have partnered up with Purina, so it's got a lot of tremendous backing, and it'll have Pet Finder Park. It'll be a place where you can bring your best pal in life and enjoy an outdoor setting and also step away. They have this incredible team of people that manage all the pets here, and you can enjoy an evening of dinner, drinks, and music, and it will, I think, be transformational. In Kansas City, in their first year of operation, they had 250,000 people, and they look to have about 300,000 people will come through this venue. So once again, how people get here, you know, is going to be a really important thing. So bus lines, rail, which is not that far away, or bicycle is really how we reconnect our city and make it much more interesting. Flip to the next slide. So another one of our projects that's near the Cortex MetroLink station is Chroma and Hue. We have about 336 units here, and we've created more what we think is a vibrant community that's connected to the neighborhood. So you can walk to the MetroLink station, you can go down Manchester to all the restaurants. There's about 400,000 square feet of retail on Manchester. There's microbrews, there's music. And, you know, this vibrancy is what makes transit work. And so the merchants that are down here are going to rely extensively on how we move people around. How do we make this a special environment? And these are just a few examples. We, as I mentioned, have about 12 projects that are all designed to be mixed use, that brings a much more dense environment down here, that people begin to weave themselves into the community and become much more of a live, work, play, vibrant, that attracts people from all places in St. Louis. We're also very focused. This is another project we're doing, workforce housing to support the workforce that's down here at WashU, BJC, St. Louis U Medical Center, and, you know, just the people that work within the district so that they have an opportunity to live here at affordable pricing. And we did this project in conjunction with WashU, BJC, and Arch to Park, and ourselves. And then we have Terra, which is more of a market rate similar to what we did at Chroma, but we're trying to really create a pulse of life and activity, and transit is a big part of making this all work in a great way and connecting all of us in a more direct way rather than being in a car. That gives you a little bit of a glimpse of what we're doing in the corridor, and I look forward to the rest of our discussion here today.
Thank you, Phil, very much for that. I got to remember that mute button. We really appreciate that overview of some of the great projects that you have going on within the corridor. I'm now going to turn it over to Rachel Witt, and she is the Executive Director of the South Grand Community Improvement District. And we have really seen a revitalization of South Grand along the highest ridership bus route. And so Rachel's going to provide us with a little bit of a different perspective about developing near a bus line. Rachel?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Kim. We are very proud on South Grand to be part of the #1 bus route in the city, the 70, and also to have the only articulated buses and soon to be electric buses coming to South Grand. Just a little bit who we are. A community improvement district is a taxing district. We were formed in 2001. Our goals is public safety, maintenance, building improvements, economic development, and public safety. We have a board of 9. They're all volunteers. The funds come from assessment rate based on square footage for our business district. So 2/3 of our budget comes from the property owners on their property tax bill. And 1/3 of our budget comes from state sales tax. 0.5% is what we collect. We are the lowest SID, what we collect at 0.5%. Many SIDs collect a full percent, and we're proud that we can keep that rate low for our business district. Next slide. Just our boundaries, we're just north of Arsenal from Salon St. Louis, which is directly across from Tara Grove Park, and then south to St. Pius Church and Carpenter's Library are our boundaries for our community improvement district. Next slide. We were very proud during the Great Streets project that the articulated buses were able to wrap in at that time, and we redesigned our streetscape to fit the bus, and also to kick off the exciting news of getting articulated buses in St. Louis, showing that there's a need of ridership, that Arts in Transit, the nonprofit arm of Bi-State, was able to commission a local artist, and the neighborhood came out to help paint the mural onto the bus. And it was on South Grand for quite a few years. So we were very proud to see South Grand being represented on the bus. And it was not just our 6 blocks, it was the 9-mile route of South Grand that was designed on this bus. So, but we're very proud to help organize the volunteer day to come out and paint the bus. It was very exciting. Next slide. Just a little bit about South Grand with our streetscape project. We were able to make the sidewalks wider, so giving more room for outdoor dining. And also when we have events, we do not shut down Grand Boulevard when we have events. There's over 23,000 cars a day, and also being the #1 bus route and the EMT route, we decided to create events around the street and utilize our sidewalks. And also really embrace those who are taking the bus to always engage with our business district through events and through commerce. A lot of our businesses staff do take the bus, and a lot of residents in the neighborhood walk up to take the bus for employment. Grand is just a major route with such major employers with the hospitals and the universities and the MetroLink transfer, that a lot of people move to the neighborhood because of the 70 and the closeness to the Grand Viaduct. Next slide. Just a little bit about South Grand, how we really embrace being the #1 bus route and having so much traffic volume that you can still create in an oasis. We partner with local artists to paint our fire hydrants to really brand South Grand and really promoting, being proud of the South Grand bus route of the 70. And then also we do a holiday light show in our outdoor event space, the Ritz Park that you see here, and really encourages people to be a part of it. Even though we have the event for our tree lighting, but the tree is on from Small Business Saturday until the new year. So anyone walking Grand, taking the bus on Grand, waiting for the bus directly across the street from that will see the light show and can participate with it. People waiting for the bus can sit in the park, grab a drink or a beverage or some food from our local restaurants and just enjoy being part of our district. We have events that embrace like children to be part of it with the chalk walk and dancing that we have with our fall festival and with bands. And we're just very excited to really embrace our streetscape and not letting the traffic or the bus line deter anything. We embrace that. We want the bus line to be part of who we are as our identity, and especially those who are taking the bus to see what's going on and be part of that energy. Ironically enough, we have a couple regulars that take the 70 who like to post onto our Instagram and Twitter page of their experience and taking photos from the bus. So it's really exciting that we have such great love for South Grand from our ridership. Next slide. Another aspect of South Grand that we really want to make sure everyone has a great experience. Since the Great Streets Project, we have embraced maintaining the street with the landscaping. And to help offset our costs, we started the South Grand Eco Crew. It's made up of volunteers from the neighborhood, and they come out and they help us with some plantings, weeding. So we want everyone who's walking South Grand, walking up to the bus, to have an experience on South Grand, and it's welcoming. And we do that with our Eco Crew and our landscaping companies who do a fabulous job on South Grand. And we have signs throughout the district showing our rain gardens and how they work, and just the respect from the community. And I just love when people stop and actually read our signs. It was a lot of work to decide what the sign should say, and being part of that and seeing people actually enjoying what we do on South Grand. And also that we created such a welcoming community that a lot of people who live in the neighborhood only have one car instead of two, and they take the bus to work. So we're very proud when I hear stories from residents and why they moved to the neighborhood, and it's really embracing the bus line. Next slide. Just a little data about South Grand since the Great Streets Project. We've had over 34 businesses open. We have 3 projects in the works that's going to be opening soon, some new restaurants and retail, and some construction that we're in progress with renovating some spaces. One space is being converted from to 2 spaces. It was Mangia Italiano. A wall is going up, and it's going to end up being 2 restaurants. So that's under construction right now. And then just through the years, we've increased by 35 new office tenants on South Grand throughout the business district. And just having this new infrastructure that we were able to fit the articulated buses with the Great Streets design and just maintaining it, we've increased our revenue and sales tax that we take in, that 0.5% I mentioned earlier, by 33%. So it shows people are engaged with our business district through the events, through the streetscape, and through the ridership that we have through the articulated buses. And I'm intrigued to see what our ridership is going to be when we get the electric buses, and if that's going to encourage more people to take mass transit. Thank you so much for everyone for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Rachel, very much for that presentation. I'm going to turn it over to our final panelist this morning. Bryan Rogers is the Director of Long Range Planning with Metro Transit Bi-State Development. And Bryan, I think you can bring us all back together with the community mobility hubs and your presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks for having me. I think Mike's queuing up the PowerPoint.
Again, we apologize. Technology challenges keep you on your toes in a panel discussion, that's for sure. So we seem to have some lag time this morning. We apologize.
No worries, we can get rolling. So in 2019, Metro went into that Metro Reimagine planning efforts to kind of focus on high frequency routes and identified those high frequency routes. So we have 75 bus routes, and we realized that 10 of those routes carry about half of our boardings. So we wanted to really focus in on that core network And coming out of that planning effort, we also identified high transfer hubs. These are spots where people are making their transfer from one bus to another, and hundreds of people are doing this throughout the day. Within those transfer hubs, we identified the opportunity to implement community mobility hubs. Let me make sure this is all. So I went straight to this. So mobility hubs traditionally are all about multimodal options and also placemaking. And with the placemaking piece, South Grand, you all have it, have the gaming gone, trying to incorporate all of those beautiful elements of stormwater mitigation and art and just all of those beautiful things along the bus route. And that's placemaking. I incorporated this picture into this slide because on our initial walk for the community mobility hubs, we were around and looking at the existing bus shelters in a space that doesn't have all of the beautification elements, but it is a high frequency route. And I see a kid riding down the street scooter, and he pulls over, stops, lays it up against the bus shelter, and hops on the bus. And I've been noticing that throughout St. Louis, seeing people do that, and that's the community mobility hub in a nutshell, trying to incorporate all of those pieces, including the placemaking elements, to provide a space where it's essentially a micro version of transit-oriented development. Next slide, please. So I actually saw someone in the chat mention ADA accessibility. That's one of our main focuses, as well as the placemaking piece, providing a safe transfer spot with innovative approaches such as solar lighting, climate control seating, complementary Wi-Fi. All of these elements can be tied into the mobility hubs. When we were looking at those transfer hubs, we actually noticed something very interesting as far as St. Louis goes. Hart mentioned the big focus on the MetroLink and that the new trend is now looking at the bus routes. A lot of those transfer hubs, they're located in spots where there seems to be almost a disconnect in neighborhoods. We all know St. Louis, you can walk one block and it'd be a completely different world. A lot of those transfer hubs were in those spots. So these community mobility hubs can essentially be the key to creating complete corridors in St. Louis. And when we prioritize which hubs, we would focus on first, equity plays a big part in it. So what we're trying to do is this is actually a rendering of one of the hubs in Germany that's actually been finished up. But what we're trying to do is kind of align mobility with accessibility. So there are a number of neighborhoods, for instance, that may be located in food deserts. Well, we all know that in today's world, you don't necessarily need to go to a brick and mortar store to get access to healthy food. So why not have refrigerated pickup spots for food in an area that has e-scooters or car sharing, an area that could utilize parklets to implement farmers markets, kind of looking at a different way of land use. And I know APA is a part of APA, so I'm not going to go and quote Jane Jacobs or anything like that. But what what we're trying to do is activate these spots and get people moving around and get them access to things that are basic needs, but aren't necessarily around and safe to access. So traditionally, mobility hubs have been all about mobility, but we're trying to utilize them to do a whole lot more and encourage development in areas that that don't normally get it. Next slide, please. So big shout out to CMT. They actually have done the placemaking elements in Maplewood, and also have something working over in Emerson Park, Illinois. These are a few images from around the country of just very innovative ways to look at bus shelters to incorporate the placemaking piece. And one of the things that we were looking to do is partner with Craft Alliance and look into implementing different art into these spaces as well. I loved, I don't know if anyone have seen it, but I love the idea of solar powered bus shelters to do green roofs. I've actually seen buses that have green roofs on them. So fingers crossed we can somehow talk that into existence. But I wanted you all to see some of the innovative approaches to bus shelters, to know that it can be more than just what, like Bill said, a metal pole with a sign on it. We can do so much more in these spaces to activate and drive things home. And that is essentially community mobility hubs. I'm happy to answer any questions moving forward.
Thank you very much, Bryan. And thank you to all of you for your presentations this morning. I did also want to introduce, we do have John Langa with us. John is the VP of Economic Development for Bi-State Metro Transit. So welcome, John. There may be some questions that we hope that you can answer as well. Let's jump right in right now with some questions for our panel. And if you have any questions, please feel free to add those to the chat box and our Q&A box. I know there is a couple, but what we noticed on the conversation this morning is many of these developments fall within the city of St. Louis city limits. So as a partner, from your perspective, what could the city do to help foster new developments around transit, whether it's a bus line or the MetroLink system, to continue this trend? Anyone want to jump in?
So I'll talk about that a little bit.
Sure, Phil, jump right in.
Yeah, I think, I love what has happened on Grand. It's so indicative of how you can make everyday walking experience positive. And it's art, it's landscaping, it's wide sidewalks, it's people who live in the neighborhood who embrace it. And these mobility hubs that Bryan was talking about, we need to be creative. We need to be embracing the arts. We need to embrace, lots of different things to give it a vibe and a spirit that makes it fun to use these things. And I think the frequency of the bus lines, I know on Grand, they run about every 10 minutes. So you got dependability and access that I think most people, don't really understand. And so the more that we make these enjoyable spots to get on a bus or get on the MetroLink, and also making it so that we have these greenways that allow people to get there to these mobility hubs are really important. And I think the Great Rivers Greenway, that's all gonna come together here to help activate these transit, is gonna be very important. I think they're running along the MetroLink too, which is good. So it gives people a different way to see their city that's much more vibrant than being in a car. You start to interact with people, which I think is great when you're on the street and interacting in groups. So I think, what I saw today was a healthy, fresh look of how you can, use these systems and activate them and be creative. And the more people we bring down here that sees that will embrace it. And I think Grand is probably our best example. It's fabulous what you've done down there.
Thank you.
I'll add something to that. I think I never thought of this quite the words, but I think Bryan's point of, Bill just said it too, that there's a desperate need to make placemaking happen. On Grand, it kind of, you've got Grand, which helps, but it just occurred to me, in all of the lengthy city approvals with city planning and everybody else, not one person ever asked about transit. We brought it up because we had it in the plan, but not one person. So there's something lacking there. No.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. So we do have some questions from our attendees. And I think you touched on this a little bit, Bryan, but from the developer's perspective, do any of the developers hire walkability and or ADA consultants for the projects that you have underway?
We do. We're doing a big project in Webster, and part of that is you've got a lot of people who want walkability, access, and connectivity. And I think you've got to have perspective of professionals. So PGAV, we've hired who does a lot of that. I know they were hired by Arch to Park to do a study along Vandeventer, where TrailNet is going from Tower Grove Park all the way up to Cortex. And Greater St. Louis STL is using these experts to help drive what needs to be here, what is the character. And it's important to have a professional assessment, that provides a framework, and also good architecture, good landscaping. Once again, creating these streetscapes that are less all about cars, but having dedicated bike lanes, dedicated lanes for bus, and making it much more transit friendly and people friendly. And that all leads into, if you go to a vibrant city, go into New York, you don't think about driving a car. It's just too much of an issue. And you love getting on the transit system. I took LaGuardia into downtown New York, and it was like, wow, you get to see people, the city, you get to take things in rather than, when I got there the first time I took the car, it took me an hour and a half to get downtown from LaGuardia into downtown New York. And it was like, holy smokes. And I took the train back out when I left, and it was, about a third of the time, and a much better experience. And the same thing can happen here, as we activate and make this a better, experience to everybody.
So next question, the 70 bus line is great. How do we increase density along other bus routes? Does increased frequency need to happen first? So is it a chicken and egg theory? Is it more of what Bryan was talking about, that we have to add amenities around bus stops? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh gosh.
Let me chime in this, and Phil's done a lot more in St. Louis than I have, but he might have a view of this. It seems to me that St. Louis, to a great extent, development is driven by developers and not by the city. It's kind of come on in. That St. Louis as a whole could do a much better job at planning, proactive planning. And part of that could very well be focusing on areas that where transit hubs might be located, and then focusing on the development proposals to make sure that those opportunities are taken advantage of.
Bill, I think you're right. And that's one of the things we did on the DeBoliver TOD project that Jeff Tagataw's company is building. And it had it specifically reflected form-based code, prescriptive development standards, as well as in working with the city, us, and the city. We specifically had bus pull-in lanes within the project itself, but it became that larger, broader transit type of conversation. And Bill, I agree with what you're saying. It's important, and that's where projects like that have those extra elements in them if those additional planning and zoning recommendations are made available to the developer and to the community. So.
And I think conversations like these are gonna be what put that value piece in motion when it comes to developers looking at the bus routes. I know Bill's development actually has specific setbacks for bus stops, things like that. I mean, they seem small, but these are the value around those transfer hubs and just bus stops in general, which is what's needed in order for bus routes to be even talked about. Like someone mentioned, it's not even being talked about, but we can only develop so much in one spot. So it's time to spread out and also look at how we approach community engagement in order, when we incorporate placemaking, like South Grand, how do we incorporate what the people that live there want in that placemaking space and those development spaces? Because it's not all just big buildings. Like the development got to start from the ground up. So you got to go in and really know what they want to do it the right way. So I think we're starting to create that value right now within this conversation.
Thank you, Bryan. So this question probably goes to Metro Transit. When will the electric transit buses begin rolling on the 70 grand? And then a subsequent question is, has there been any consideration about additional infrastructure away from the bus yard? Have you considered quick charge stations along Grand to help keep the buses charged throughout the operating day?
Okay, I can take the first half of that. So the electric buses are looking to be implemented around May, June. There's still some testing going on with them and also finishing up that infrastructure over at the Broadway Transit Center. So they should be coming around this summer. We have the 60 foots coming this year and then the 40 foots coming next year. John, you want to chime in on the electric charging station?
I think the question might have been, if I heard it correctly, about some sort of charging system for the buses along Grand. I don't know that that's been looked into as much as the, I'll call the Midway station that we're putting up there at North Taylor for our buses. Our buses charge overnight at the Brentwood Garage, and they then have that Midway charging opportunity up there on North Taylor. So that's what we have right now. But we might be looking at additional as we roll out more buses, but that's today's infrastructure.
Great, thank you. So a question that has just come in, is it more difficult to implement TOD in the county, near the county MetroLink stations because of the multiple jurisdictions? Will we eventually see TOD around every station? And I would say both Missouri and Illinois be added to that question.
Well, I'll say a few things. One of the things that got me interested in the Armory was when I traveled to Los Angeles, who's doing a major light rail system throughout the whole greater Los Angeles area, which is no small undertaking. But I was downtown staying, and we were at a convention for counselors of real estate, and they took us on a tour of all the transit-oriented development, and it was all driven by a lot of European, Asian money and developers who had come in, and they, in their country, were so used to developing around these transit centers, it was changing the dynamics of LA because it was pretty much dead, 10 years ago, and now you've got this incredible growth and expansion downtown, and it's around these transit stations, and it includes living, entertainment, restaurants, and a lot of, because it's so expensive, a lot of vertical development. And I think, it's just taking advantage of a great asset to develop around that creates economic opportunities for so many people to get there, to work, to travel and visit a community. And usually if I go to like San Diego or any city, I love getting on the transit system to explore the city because you get to sit back and take it in. And I did in San Diego. I took the loop all the way around downtown just to see what the city looked and felt like. And I've done it here in St. Louis, get on the MetroLink, at a stop and take it all the way over to Scott Air Force Base, because it's an education about our transit system and what you get to see, where it lands, and how we should take advantage of this incredible system that we got started that can get expanded, not just by rail, but by buses, by bikes, by, electric, scooters and all kinds of things. So it's an asset that we need to really take advantage of. And you can turn these things in from kind of, blasé looking transit stops into exciting places that feel good. And part of that is you bring people around them and experiences that activate and make people comfortable because you have density and you're not just by yourself hopping on the. So I think that's a big focus of ours. We got an asset that sits here And in most big cities where you do have so much congestion, these transit-oriented are such hubs for people to connect and live near, because it just simplifies your life. You don't have to have a car.
Okay, great. Thank you, Phil. So we're going to move off the Grand Bus line for a minute. Does Kings Highway, from your perspectives, north and south, have a large enough ridership that could spur housing and commercial development? Anyone want to jump in this morning?
Yeah, it definitely has the ridership to back it. I mean, I'm not building housing, so I can't speak to that. But I can, from the data ridership side, I know that it has the ridership numbers. There's actually a couple potential community mobility hub spots along Kings Highway. So, Phil, you want to throw up a house, housing development? Let me know. The data backs it up.
Well, it's it just feels good when you do this stuff, and you got to do it with scale. And that's why we're so concentrated with so many projects, because if you do one off, they don't have enough impact. Mm-hmm. So the more you do, the more that it actually works. And so a lot of our concentration is not just one site, and that takes time. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes money, and it takes transformation, because most of the sites we're buying have to be transformed. They've got environmental issues, they were industrial, and now we're transforming them into livable sites. And so you have to create some ambiance about that site too, and it's a whole host of things. And you got to have enough going on that people start to see this feels good. And you got to run these things so that they have their own vibe, and they have chemistry. They can't be they got to have some, visual excitement about them.
And also along busier bus routes or some of the busier MetroLink stations, does the finance industry start looking at the proximity of those for location efficient mortgages, whereby instead of qualifying maybe for an 80-10 or 80-20 mortgage, it's a 90-10 mortgage because you need one car instead of two cars. And so you can invest more in your house, more in your neighborhood, and have one car instead of two and use public transit. So there's opportunities like that to look at also around some of these busier lines.
And also it's like the chicken or the egg with the streetscape on Kings Highway. It's a very busy street. The traffic volume is quite high. We've tried our hardest to create the best experience within our district on South Grand for people to live in the neighborhood, to take metro. To take the bus, but Kings Highway it's not that experience there. So I know they're working on redoing the forming a business association, looking into forming a community improvement district on Kings Highway. Maybe eventually they can be the next Great Streets project to really evaluate that and create the experience, and then have the funds to maintain it like what we've done. But it's all about experience, I feel, to encourage more people to take the bus. Like what Phil mentioned, his experience in LA and New York, you got to create that feel, that buzz. And also right now, parking is very inexpensive in the city of St. Louis compared to other cities. So that doesn't help with increasing ridership. So we need to, have more density, will increase more ridership because it will take longer to get point A to point B. And when you realize it's quicker to take transit than to drive, that will change the dynamics in St. Louis. But it's going to be a slow trickle with that. So right now what we can do is create placemaking, like what we've done on South Grand, what Bill was working on in Lafayette Square on Shoto, and what Phil has done in the Grove and on Grand Boulevard near the Armory. So by creating those experiences with their developments, will encourage more ridership because you feel part of the community and it's placemaking as well. So if we can encourage more placemaking on Kings Highway, I think that will encourage increased ridership and more people living in the neighborhood deciding to take transit or deciding they don't need two cars and just one.
Thank you.
I was thinking about something Bryan said a minute ago. Back to kind of what the city can do. When we're going through the approval processes, they're all the usual questions. And one of them, there was somebody asked about ADA. Yes, I think all of our developments have ADA. But there was, there was a lengthy discussion about that with the Planning Commission and LCRA. But in all of the incentives that the city, the help the city gives, and in our case, a lot of help rebuilding the infrastructure there, they could easily have said, what about transit? What are you going to do on Jefferson? What are you going to do on Shoto? Now we built that into our plans, but we did it, and the city could easily have made that one of the requirements in order to get the support that we asked for and they gave us for the overall development. So I don't know. It is a chicken and egg thing, I suppose, but the city could help itself a lot more by, in this case, bringing transit into the conversation when they make approvals for projects.
Thank you. So we do have several Alder people who have joined us today, so thank you very much for joining us. And I know Alderwoman Rice has placed in our chat box that there's a great location on Kings Highway for development in the 8th Ward, and she would love to discuss just slowing down traffic on Kings Highway to make things safer for pets, bikes, and vehicles. She doesn't want to talk about it right now, but she's available to discuss this with any developer who is interested. So there is interest in the 8th Ward for development with Alderwoman Rice. So thank you for putting that in the chat box. We'll put that out there all over so people know. To Phil, there was a question, Phil. How many dwelling units are in your developments in the central corridor? And given the reduction in population in the city of St. Louis, does the demand for housing still exist, or are your developments creating the demand for housing?
So we have to do market studies to get the financing. So we've done probably 6 market studies, and that really are interesting in terms of what they provide you. But most of what we realized is that we are creating demand. Yeah. And creating great experiences that people embrace. And we're creating community, and we're creating, commercial excitement about what we bring. So we did urban chestnut brewing. So, one of the things that we realized, these big draws for destination entertainment help make the living thing much more easy for people to decide, yes, I love what I see. I love this community. I love the vibe. So we have right now, we have Chroma, which was 335. We have under construction 475 units on the west end of the Grove, right near Swan and Taylor and off of Newstead. The Armory will have about 500. And then we were developing another 500 along Vandeventer from McCree up to Sarah, right before you get to Manchester. So over the next 3 or 4 years, we'll build close to 2,000 units in Midtown. And they're all rich with amenities. They all have a destination entertainment piece nearby. So that, like our development on McCree, if we have 250,000 people that come there that love pets, we have a pet-friendly apartment that has a beautiful pool, that has a bike repair shop, it has bike storage, it has all these amenities that make that experience something that you really can embrace. And so what we've also done is we create workstations and conference rooms so people that live there can live and work in the place. Particularly since COVID, you're seeing a lot more dynamics that having that place that creates this whole environment you can, embrace, both live, work, and play is what's driving this excitement. And I would say we get a tremendous amount of people who are new to St. Louis, who are used to that kind of experience. They're coming from Chicago or Nashville or Kansas City that are coming here, and they love what they see. And our investors and the banks that finance our projects are primarily from the West Coast and East Coast. And the equity, because most of our projects are in opportunity zones. So if they bring their money here and you invest, you're allowed to hold it for 10 years and be tax exempt when you sell it on the outside. And that's to create economic development in these distressed areas. So when we bring in people from San Francisco or LA, they're awed by our universities, our neighborhoods, and the chemistry that we have and the depth of our culture here. You know, we've got great institutions, great parks. So it's a lot easier, you know, bringing these people from afar here and they see what we have and they're just blown away. And you're also getting a lot of pressure. You're seeing it with McKelvey. He's bringing a lot of square people here, you know, and making St. Louis a very affordable, livable place, which we've always been, and an exciting place. And part of that is you got to create connectivity within our neighborhoods so that people feel, you know, can touch all that's here that's wonderful. So I think, you know, it takes process, really takes density. And, you know, for us to succeed, we really got to roll up our sleeves and do it with multiple, not just, you know, a few developers, but there'll be more and more as we succeed here that will help create this momentum.
In the early 80s, our neighborhood, I inherited a portfolio of about 200 empty houses, and they just could not sell these things. I mean, they were practically giving them away, $100, $1,000, whatever. And we met with the people who were trying to sell them, and they realized the mistake they were making. They were having the usual broker events on Wednesday, the lunches and stuff, but they were trying to sell at the time, to people in the county. We switched and sold only to relocation agents, had these agents in on the Wednesdays, and all of that, the whole portfolio disappeared in about 4 months because it was people coming from Boston, Philadelphia, DC, other cities, New York, who understood the value of being in a city and being close to all of the amenities that Phil talked about. Now, I think my gut tells me that native St. Louisans are figuring that out now too, that there's an advantage of being in the core. We're certainly seeing that in the square. A lot of particularly empty nesters coming in, but also young people, so.
Thank you. Okay, so we have time for a couple more quick questions. One of them is, are there any policies like density bonuses that would encourage more TOD that are being explored or advocated for?
I think there could be, but I think it's the reverse. If you had a plan of where you thought these transit hubs should be, and then promote the development around that and offer the incentives.
What I'm seeing in lieu of density bonuses is the zoning that's being recommended through the form-based code is a fairly dense pattern. I think that's almost superseding the individual density bonus or transfer development rights you might see otherwise, but that seems to be the approach now. Not saying density bonus is wrong, but it seems to be coming through form-based code first.
So we're going to go with one more question from the question and answer section, and then we have one final question for all of you. So when we talk about redevelopment, we have different areas, and one of them is the northern segment of the proposed north side, south side transit expansion. So can you describe some of the differences in trying to develop TOD in a challenging market such as the north side compared to developing in the central corridor, for instance? Anyone want to field that question?
Kim, developing in the central corridor now or 30 years ago when it wasn't doing so well?
Right. So I think this question is probably for now, John.
What I'm trying to say is overnight success. I mean, central corridor is cooking, it's wonderful, but it's been a 30-year overnight success, which is fantastic. So do we then take that same approach and just day after day after day, make a specific area better, investments and activity that it may need to get there? It's hard to do it overnight.
Well, I think the dynamics, I'll make one comment. I think the dynamics are changing north dramatically. One, we've realized that there's a lot of opportunity, and you're seeing it along Del Mar, which has been our nemesis for a long time. You're starting to see with the St. Luke's Hospital. I saw Maxine Clark the other evening speak about her really getting involved with Clayco to really take that St. Luke's Hospital that was built during the World's Fair and turn it into a community center for health and not-for-profits, also creating apartments and creating some commercial that really embraces the community and draws people there and allows people to really see this flower that's being created that'll open up next year that is going to be awesome. And I think you're seeing it with the NGA. That's a huge economic opportunity for this city. You're going to move 3,500 people up there, and there's going to be need for services, people to live, and you're starting to see these big anchors that allow us to really invest and go outside of this central corridor. And, you know, that connector bus that's going to run down Jefferson or rail that comes down Jefferson is going to make that all hum, you know, because you're seeing all of a sudden Jefferson and 40 is going to be a full interchange. You're seeing MLS come here. You're seeing Wells Fargo put their wealth advisors here. It's their world headquarters now. You know, we've got so many good things that I think it's just going to ignite here, and it's going to happen over the next 4 or 5 years. And there's a lot of reasons for it. And it's economic activity that's going to make people want to stay down here and live too.
And Phil, also pulling that a little bit north is the McKelvey investment, the old post, the old Globe Democrat, et cetera, kind of equidistant up towards NGA from 40. And yeah, I mean, there's some things that can push it.
So you got 1,200 people that McKelvey's bringing. Accenture came into St. Louis. That's 1,400 new jobs. Yep. The USDA that went into the Metropolitan Life Building. These are all big game changers. And then you got just a lot more stability as a result of that everybody sees opportunity and they'll start to roll up their sleeves, and there'll be some incentives to make that happen on the front end. Right. And we need workforce housing in a big way in this town, like every city.
I think Phil is hitting on something. Someone in the chat mentioned the cultural shift around how we look at the bus routes. Certain areas in St. Louis, you know, they've been pitched as they're challenging, but a developer and even myself as a planner, like, I'm not going to look at that as challenging. I'm looking at that as an opportunity. So, like, how do we perceive that bus or area is what's going to change everything?
So on that comment, Brian, thank you for that. I want one final comment for all of our panelists is, what do you think is the key takeaway, your soundbite from each of you to our audience on the future of developing near transit or bus stops? How can individuals, companies, and stakeholders impact these decisions? Rachel, would you like to jump in first?
Just one observation I've had on South Grand. I walk my district a lot. A lot of people know that about me. And when there's a Cardinals games, a Blues games, I see people opting not to drive and they take the bus to the stadium. And it's just everyone taking a moment and making one small change in their life to look at transit in a different way. If it's going to a game, a concert, maybe you have an initiative with your office, like how many people today will take transit, is how does your company or you as an individual will embrace transit in a different way. And if we all try to make small changes and just try a new experience with transit, you might be thinking differently, because it's all about that experience, like what Phil was touching on earlier with his experience in other cities. Why can't we make a different experience for all of us living here? So I asked the participants today who have never taken the bus before, or even the MetroLink, take one day when you come downtown or to the city or to anywhere in your community and decide, I'm not going to touch my keys. I'm going to take the bus, and see what type of experience you have. And if we all start looking at that differently, I think that would encourage more development and more TODs in our community as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Fabulous advice. Bill?
I'll go back to what I was saying before. I think that there needs to be a much greater integration between city planning, LCRA, and planning for transit. It doesn't seem to be there at all. And then I gave the example of MoDOT. MoDOT seems to be the missing link in this, a lot of this. They have to be part of this as well. On our project right now, on the Shoto project, we've got a standoff between the city streets and MoDOT, because MoDOT controls Shoto and city streets controls Jefferson. And they almost don't talk.
Thank you, Bill. Phil, would you like to jump in?
Sure. I think I love all the energy that we have amongst our city, and I love our city. I think it's fabulous. And I think one of the biggest things we can do is get involved, all of us, in making this a better place to live. And that means riding the bus, coming down into the city, embracing restaurants and entertainment, and getting involved in being a promoter of our city. We have a fabulous place to live, work, and to enjoy. And it's all about our neighborhoods, our history. And there isn't another city in the Midwest that's it's got such great history and such amazing free things to go touch and feel here, whether it's the art museum or the zoo. I mean, you can't do that anywhere else. So I think we just need everybody to say, I love my place. I want to make it work.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Bryan, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is kind of piggybacking off of Bill, and that's communication, and also trying to tie together efforts. I spoke with Mike Foley the other day about, we're approaching placemaking in these different spaces, both doing the same thing. Let's work together. Communication is a big part, and Bill is, talking high level with the city, and that all ties to community members too. How, like you said, they're stakeholders, how do they impact those decisions as well? So trying to make sure everyone's at the table so we can align missions and keep moving things forward, moving the ball down the field.
Great. John, would you like to give some soundbite, a final thought as economic development?
Two things, and one, this is, I think Rachel nailed it, but I'll use the word community fabric. It's just part of the daily activities of all of us, that it's another way to see St. Louis, work in St. Louis, live in St. Louis, and it's, bus and train and call a ride for that matter. I mean, they really serve all of us. The other is for the areas that are the up and coming areas, we can't just talk about it, we got to get after it. And again, I think that happened in that central corridor. There's other parts of the city that are that same opportunity, and let's go make those things happen.
So I want to thank all of our panelists this morning for this really robust conversation about what the possibilities are about developing around buses, multimodal sites, public transit in general. We will post this video to our social media channels later this morning for anyone interested in rewatching or rehashing what we discussed this morning, or sharing it with your colleagues if they were unable to attend this morning. We will make this a resource on our website. I do want to thank the APA Metro section and the Green Business Challenge for co-sponsoring this event with us. We really appreciate your support in helping to spread the message further about public transit as an opportunity and a catalyst for development in the St. Louis region. We hope that you'll look for additional information about our upcoming events on our website at cmt-stl.org. Also, check out our social media channels. We have an upcoming transit conference in St. Louis in September for a tri-state transit conference, and it will be in person. We have our 10-toe walks going on. We're linking transit to outdoor destinations if you're interested, and we hope in the near future to highlight some of these developments on 10-toe walks. And we have our small, but we think really important permanent placemaking project underway at the Emerson Park MetroLink station. Construction will start shortly, and we hope to have that open by late summer. So we hope you'll come out and see the changes that occur at the Emerson Park station. We know that the pandemic has reinforced the essentialness of public transit, and it will be continue to be essential for St. Louisans as they get back to work, building safe, sustainable, and economically viable communities. So we challenge you to get involved in the public transit conversation, whether that's riding transit, joining Citizens for Modern Transit, or just joining us for some of our upcoming events. Thank you very much for your time today, and make it a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you.